Princess Leia opened her eyes slowly. The light above her was too bright. It stung her vision and made her head pulse. With pain, she tried to lift her hand to cover her face, but something stopped her. She looked down and saw her wrists were held together by a band of blue light. It hummed with a low, steady sound. She was lying on a hard bed, covered by a thin white sheet. The room was white and clean. It smelled like strong soap and cold metal. There were no windows. There was only the door and the machines beeping nearby. She remembered the battle clearly. Her ship, the Silverwing, was flying near the edge of human space. They were on a diplomatic mission, but the humans attacked without warning, or so she was told. There were explosions. Her ship shook violently. Then everything went dark. Now she was here. She knew where this was. This was a human ship. The stories about humans were scary. Every child in the Zalari kingdom knew the stories. Humans were violent. They did not take prisoners. They only took slaves or corpses. They were the monsters of the galaxy, the elders said. Humans enjoyed pain. They said humans would strip a ship down to nothing and kill everyone on board. Leia waited for the pain. She tightened her muscles. She expected a man to come in with a weapon. She expected them to ask for codes. She expected them to hurt her, to make her talk. Her heart beat fast against her ribs. The blue cuffs felt cold on her skin. She pulled at them, but they did not move. She was alone in the room. Silence was loud. She could hear the hum of the ship engines. It felt like a beast sleeping nearby. She wondered how long she had been out. She wondered if her crew was dead. She wondered if she would be next. Suddenly the door made a hiss sound. It slid open smoothly. Leia held her breath. Her body went stiff. Man walked in. He wore a dark blue uniform with a patch on the shoulder. He was tall. He had short brown hair. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes. He did not look like a monster. He looked like a man who had worked too hard for too long. He held a small device in his hand. He did not look at her face at first. He looked at the machine next to her bed. He walked quietly. His boots did not make much noise on the floor. Leia flinched when he moved closer. She pressed herself back against the bed. The man stopped. Immediately, he raised his hand slowly. He showed her his empty palms. He spoke in a soft voice. He said, "Easy, I am not going to hurt you." His voice was calm. It was not angry. It did not sound like a voice that threatened death. Leia did not speak. She watched him carefully. Her eyes were wide with fear. He tapped the screen on the machine. He checked the numbers. Then he looked at her arm. The skin was bruised where the cuff touched her. He frowned slightly. It looked like he was concerned. The man put the device down on the table. He reached for a blanket that was bunched up at her feet. He pulled it up gently. He covered her legs. The room was cold, and the blanket was warm. Leia was surprised. She did not move. She waited for the trick. Usually captors were kind before they were cruel. They wanted you to hope so the fall was harder, but this man did not look like he was planning anything bad. He turned to a small table. He picked up a tray. There was a cup of water and a pack of food. He placed it near her hand. He made sure she could reach it. He said, "Drink this. It will help the headache." He did not wait for an answer. He turned around. He walked to the door. Leia finally found her voice. It was rough and dry. She asked why. The man stopped. He looked back at her. His eyes were kind. They were not cold like the story said. He said, because you are hurt, rest now. Then he left the door. Hissed shut. Leia was alone again. The lock clicked into place. She looked at the water. She looked at the closed door. Her mind was confused. The stories said humans were killers. They said humans enjoyed pain, but this man, Cole, his name tag said Cole, had been gentle. He had covered her with a blanket. He had given her water. He had not asked for secrets. Leia lay back on the hard bed. She stared at the white ceiling. The blue cuffs still hummed. She was still a prisoner, but for the first time she was not sure if she was in danger. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. It was doubt. She wondered if the stories were wrong. She wondered if humans were different than everyone said. She closed her eyes. She did not drink the water. Yet she was too afraid it might be poison. But the man's eyes did not look like a poisoner. They looked like a protector. The silence returned to the room. Leia lay still. She waited to see what would happen next. The human named Jack Cole had changed nothing about her situation, but he had changed everything about how she felt. The monster she expected did not come. Only a tired man with a blanket came instead. Days passed. Slowly inside the ship, Leia was moved from the medical bay to a holding cell. It was a small room with gray walls and a hard bed. One side of the room was made of thick glass. It allowed her to see into the hallway outside. At first, she stayed away from the glass. She did not want to see the monsters. She did not want to see the humans planning her death, but boredom was stronger than fear. Eventually she walked to the glass. She sat on the floor and watched. She expected to see violence. Story said humans fought each other constantly. She expected to see them shouting or hitting each other. Instead, she saw something strange. She saw two humans walking down the hall. One of them dropped a data pad. The other person stopped. He picked it up and handed it back. They smiled at each other. They said, "Thank you." It was a small thing, but it confused Leia. Later, she saw a group of humans sitting at a table in the mess hall. They were sharing food. They were laughing. One human had a bandage on his arm. Another human poured him a drink without being asked. It looked like care. It did not look like a crew of savages. Jack Cole came to see her every day. He always knocked before the door opened. He always spoke softly. He brought her meals that were warm and fresh. He checked the energy cuffs on her wrists. He made sure they were not too tight. He never asked about her ship. He never asked about her home world defenses. He never asked for codes or passwords. Leia watched him closely. She looked for signs of deception. She looked for the mask slipping. She wanted to see the anger hidden behind his calm face, but the anger never came. Jack was just a man doing his job. His job seemed to be making sure she was okay. On the fourth day, Leia could not stay silent anymore. Jack had just placed a tray of food on the table. He turned to leave. Leia stood up. The chains on her wrists clinked softly. She spoke loudly. She said, "Why do you do this?" Jack stopped. He turned around. He looked at her with a question in his eyes. Leia stepped closer to the glass barrier inside her room. She said, "You are human. You are the enemy. You should be breaking me. You should be hurting me. To get information, that is what conquerors do. That is what your kind does." Jack leaned against the wall. He crossed his arms. He looked thoughtful. He said, "I am not a conqueror. Leia shook her head. She said, your ships are everywhere. You take what you want. Everyone knows this. The galaxy fears you. Jack sighed. It was a sad sound. He said, the galaxy knows many things that are not true. We do not take what we want. We fight because we have to. There are bad things out there. There are things that eat worlds. There are slavers who take people like you. We stand in the way of those things. Leia listened. Her heart beat fast. She said, so you are soldiers. Soldiers kill. Soldiers break things. Jack nodded. Slowly, he said, yes, we kill when we must, but we do not hurt those who cannot fight back. That is not strength. That is cruelty. There is a difference between being strong and being a bully. We try to be strong. Leia looked at her hands. She looked at the blue light of the cuffs. She said, then why am I here? Why am I a prisoner? Jack said, because we found you in a war zone. We needed to make sure you were safe. Once the space is clear, you will go home. Leia did not believe him completely. It was too simple. It was too kind. But she looked at Jack. She saw no lie in his face. She saw tiredness. She saw responsibility. She realized that the stories her elders told her were maybe just stories. Maybe they were old fears that never went away. Maybe humans were not the monsters. Maybe the monsters were the ones who told her humans were monsters. Jack pushed off the wall. He said, eat your food. It is getting cold. I will come back tomorrow. He walked to the door. It opened for him. He did not look back. Veya stood alone in the gray room. She looked out the glass window again. A human woman walked by in the hall. She saw Veya standing there. The woman did not glare. She did not spit. She gave a small wave. It was a friendly gesture. Veya did not wave back. She was too shocked. She sat back down on the hard bed. She looked at the food. It smelled good. She took a bite. It tasted like home. She thought about Jack's words, protect, not dominate. She thought about the crew outside, sharing meals, helping the injured. The belief she had held all her life was cracking. It was like a thin sheet of ice under warm sun. She had been taught to fear the dark, but now she saw a light in the dark. It was confusing. It was scary too. Change your mind about everything. If humans were not killers, then who were the enemies? If humans were saviors, why did everyone hate them? Veya lay down. She pulled the blanket up. She closed her eyes. She waited for tomorrow. She wanted to hear Jack speak again. She wanted to know more about these strange people who held her captive with kindness. The silence of the ship was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. For the first time in her life, Princess Veya wondered if she was on the wrong side of history. The quiet days on the USS Horizon came to a sudden end. On her bed, when the ship began to shake, it was not a small vibration. It was a violent jerk that threw her against the wall. The lights in the hallway turned from white to red. A loud siren began to wail. It was a deep, urgent sound that echoed through the metal floors. Veya covered her ears. She knew this sound. It was the sound of battle stations. It meant enemies were near. She ran to the glass wall of her cell. The hallway outside was chaotic. Humans were running in both directions. They wore armor now. They carried weapons. Their faces were serious. There was no laughing now. There was no sharing of food. There was only focus. Veya felt a cold knot in her stomach. This was it. The real humans would show themselves now. When danger came, they would not protect a prisoner. They would use her, they would throw her out to the enemy to save themselves. That was what logic dictated, that was what survival meant. The ship shook. Again, this time sparks flew from a ceiling in the hallway. A light fixture fell and shattered on the floor. No one stopped to clean it up, they just stepped over the glass and kept running. Vaya pressed her hand against the cold glass. She saw the enemy ships on the main view screen in the distance. They were dark and jagged. They looked like knives cutting through space. These were the Karwal. She knew their ships. The Karwal were the true aggressors in this sector. They destroyed worlds. They silenced witnesses. She realized why she was here. The Karwal wanted her dead. She had seen their crimes. If the humans handed her over, the Karwal would leave the human ship alone. The door to her cell hissed open. Jack Cole stood there. He was wearing a combat vest. He held a rifle in one hand. His face was covered in soot. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. He did not look like a man who was about to betray her. He looked like a man who was here to work. Vaya stepped back. She expected him to drag her out. She expected him to put her in a shuttle and eject her into space. Jack walked in. Quickly, he tapped a code into the panel. On her wrist cuffs, the blue light vanished. The cuffs fell to the floor. With a clatter, Vaya rubbed her wrists. She looked at him with confusion. She asked, "What are you doing?" Jack said. "We are getting you out of here." Vaya shook her head. She said, "You should give me to them. If you give me to the Karwal, they will stop firing. You will save your ship." Jack grabbed her arm. His grip was firm but not painful. He said, "We do not trade people. We do not give up friends to save our own skin. You are under our protection now. That means something." The ship lurched hard to the left. Vaya stumbled. Jack caught her before she fell. He pulled her upright. He said, "We have to move. Escape pods are on the upper deck." Vaya resisted. She pulled her arm back. She said, "Why? I'm an alien. I am a prisoner. I am not your friend." Jack looked at her. The noise of the battle was loud around them. Explosions rocked the corridor. Dust fell from the ceiling. Jack shouted over the noise. He said, "It does not matter what you are. It matters what we are. We are humans. We do not leave people behind." Vaya stopped arguing. She looked at his face. She saw no fear. She saw only determination. She realized that he was telling the truth. The stories were wrong. The elders were wrong. The humans were not going to sacrifice her. They were going to risk their lives for her. This was harder to understand than hatred. Hatred was simple. Sacrifice was complex. It required a belief in something greater than survival. Jack pushed her toward the door. He said, "Stay close to me. Do not stop for anything." They ran into the hallway. The air smelled like smoke and burnt metal. Red lights flashed rhythmically. Every few seconds, the floor tilted as the ship took another hit. Jack moved in front of her. He raised his rifle. He fired down the corridor at something Vaya could not see. Small drones were buzzing in the air. Jack shot them out of the sky. They fell to the floor. Sparking, he was shielding her with his own body. He took the position of greatest danger. Vaya ran behind him. Her heart pounded in her chest. She was not running from a captor. She was running with a guardian. They reached a junction. The path forward was blocked by debris. A large metal beam had fallen across the walkway. Jack stopped. He checked his scanner. He said, "This way." He led her toward a maintenance Ladder, the ship groaned under the stress, the voice of Captain Laura Barnes came over the intercom. Her voice was calm despite the chaos. She said, "All hands prepare for evasive maneuver, hold the line." Vea looked up. At the speaker, the captain was not ordering them to surrender, she was ordering them to fight for a ship that was breaking apart, to fight for a prisoner who meant nothing to them. Vea climbed the ladder after Jack. She looked down at the deck below. Smoke was rising. The human crew was still fighting. They were not running away. They were holding the line so she could escape. The belief she had held for her entire life was shattering completely. The killers were actually the saviors, and the saviors were dying so she could live. They ran down the last corridor toward the escape bay. The floor was hot under their boots. Smoke filled the air and made it hard to breathe. Jack coughed into his arm. Vea covered her mouth with her hand. The red emergency lights flashed above them. It made the hallway look like it was pulsing with blood. They reached the heavy doors of the escape pod bay. Jack pushed the manual override. The doors groaned and slid open. Inside, the room was dark. Most of the pods had red lights on them. They were damaged. Only one pod at the end of the row showed a green light. It was ready to launch. Jack ran to the pod. He checked the control panel on the wall. His face fell. He looked worried. Vea asked what was wrong. Jack said, "The main computer is dead. The automatic launch system is locked. To send this pod away, someone has to stay here. Someone has to hold the manual override button until the pod clears the ship. If I go with you, the lock stays on. We both stay here. We both die." Vea shook her head quickly. She said, "No, we both go. Find another way." Jack looked at her. His eyes were serious. He said, "There is no time to fix it. The Carwell are coming. I can hear them in the hall. They are close." Vea said, "Then we fight together." Jack said, "No, you are the princess. You have to live. I am just a lieutenant. My job is to make sure you get home." Vea grabbed his arm. Her grip was tight. She said, "I will not leave you. That is not what heroes do." Jack pulled away gently. He said, "This is not about heroes. This is about survival, and you are the one who needs to survive." The sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway outside. Carwell boarders were here. Jack raised his rifle. He fired 3 shots toward the door. Sparks flew near the entrance. He turned back to Vea. He pushed her toward the open pod. "Get in." Vea stood still. Tears were in her eyes. She had never seen anyone do this. In her world, leaders saved themselves. Soldiers died for leaders, but Jack was not a leader. He was just a man, and he was choosing to die for her. Jack shouted, "Get in. The enemy is here." Vea stepped into the pod. She sat in the hard chair. The seat felt cold against her back. Jack stepped into the doorway. He did not get in. He stayed outside. He began to type on the external keypad. His hands moved fast. The heavy door began to close. Vea reached out. She tried to stop it with her hands. Jack looked at her. He smiled. It was a small, sad smile. He said, tell them we are not monsters." Vea cried. She said, "You are not. You are heroes." The door sealed shut with a loud hiss. Jack was gone. Vea was alone in the small metal pod. She saw him through the thick glass window. He turned around. He faced the hallway. The Carwell soldiers appeared. In the smoke, they were tall and dark. They wore black armor. They raised their Weapons, Jack raised his rifle. He did not run, he stood his ground. He fired. At them, he was protecting the pod. Launch sequence. Vaya pounded on the glass. She screamed for him to run, but he could not hear her. The glass was too thick. The pod engines ignited. There was a loud boom. The pod shot out of the ship. Vaya was pressed back into her seat. The force was heavy. It hurt her chest. She looked out the window. USS Horizon was big and dark against the stars. It was burning. Fires ran along the hull. She saw the explosion. It started near the escape bay. The ship broke in two. The light was bright. It lit up the space around them. Jack was gone. The ship was gone. The silence returned to the pod. It was quiet now. The battle was over for her. The pod drifted away. It was safe. The Carewell ships did not follow her. They were busy finishing off the Horizon. Vaya sat in the silence. The emergency beacon was blinking. It would call for help, but she did not feel safe. She felt heavy. Her chest hurt. She looked at her hands. They were shaking. She remembered the water he gave her. She remembered the blanket. She remembered the smile. He kept his promise. He protected her. He did not dominate her. He saved her. Pod spun slowly. The stars moved. Outside, Vaya closed her eyes. She could not watch the debris field anymore. She thought about her home. She thought about the council. They would want to know what happened. They would want to know why she lived. She knew what she had to say. She had to tell them the truth. The truth was hard. The truth was that a human died for an alien princess. The truth was that the monsters were actually men like Jack Cole. The pod continued into the dark. Vaya waited for rescue. She held the memory of the human soldier in her heart. It was a heavy memory. It was a precious memory. It was the truth that would change everything. She wiped the tears from her face. She sat up straight. She was alive because he was gone. She would make sure his death meant something. She would make sure the galaxy knew what really happened here. The pod flew on into the empty space. Hours later, a Zalari rescue ship found the small pod. It floated in the dark space near the debris field. The rescue crew pulled Vaya inside. She was safe. She was alive, but she did not feel happy. She felt heavy. Her heart felt like it was made of stone. She held the black box recording tightly in her hand. It contained the memory of the human ship Horizon. It contained the memory of Jack Cole. The ship took her home to the Zalari capital. The planet was blue and green. It was beautiful. But Vaya could only think of the gray metal of the human ship. When she arrived, the High Council was waiting. They met in a large hall with high ceilings. The walls were made of white stone. The elders sat on high chairs above her. They wore long robes of gold and purple. They looked angry. They believed the humans had attacked her. They believed humans were kidnappers. The head elder spoke. His voice was loud in the quiet room. He said the humans must pay. We will send our fleet. We will destroy their ships. We will show them they cannot touch us. The other elders nodded. They wanted war. They wanted revenge. They did not know what really happened in the dark of space. Vaya stood in the center of the room. She was tired. Her clothes were still dirty from the battle. She looked up at the elders. She said no. The room went silent. The elders looked down at her. She was their princess. She was supposed to agree with them. Vaya shook her head. She said, "We cannot fight them. They are not our enemies." The head elder frowned. he said. They captured you, they held you prisoner. Vaya said, they saved me. She walked to the center console. She placed the black box on the table. She activated the screen. A large image appeared in the air above them. The room went dark. The recording began to play. The elders watched. They saw the human ship. They saw the medical bay. They saw Lieutenant Jack Cole giving the princess water. They saw him covering her with a blanket. The elders whispered, this was not what captors did. Then the scene changed. It showed the battle, the red lights, the smoke. They saw the humans fighting the Carewell. They saw Captain Laura Barnes ordering the ship to defend the prisoner. They saw the crew running toward danger, not away from it. Then the recording showed the escape pod. The elders saw Jack Cole unlocking the cuffs. They heard his voice, we do not leave people behind. The elders watched. As Jack stayed behind, they watched him seal the door. They watched him stand alone against the Carewell borders. They watched the explosion that took the human ship. The recording ended. The lights came back on. The room was very quiet. No one spoke. The head elder looked at his hands. He looked at Vaya. His anger was gone. Now he looked ashamed. He realized his fear had blinded him. He realized the stories were old and wrong. Vaya spoke again. Her voice was soft but strong. She said, the galaxy tells us humans are monsters, but I saw them. They died for me. They did not know me. I was just an alien, but they gave their lives so I could live. If we attack them now, we kill the only friends we have in this sector. The Carewell are the real enemy. The humans stood against them for us. We must stand with them. The elders looked at each other. They talked in low voices. Finally, the head elder stood up. He said, there will be no war. We will not attack the humans. Instead, we will send aid. We will thank them. Decision was made. The war was stopped. Before it began, the news spread across the galaxy. The Zalari kingdom declared peace with humanity. Other worlds heard the story. They began to question their own fears. The lies about humans started to fade. Years passed. Vaya became queen of her people. She never forgot Jack Cole. On her home world, a monument was built. It was made of white stone. It stood in a large park where children played. On the stone there was a name written in human letters and Zalari letters. It said Jack Cole. It said crew of the Horizon. People came to the monument every day. They left flowers. They left small notes. Vaya visited it often. She would stand before the stone. She would remember the tired eyes and the kind smile. She would remember the blanket and the water. Humanity was no longer a word for fear. It was a word for hope. The galaxy learned a hard lesson that day. Sometimes the thing you fear the most is the thing that saves you. Vaya looked at the sky. Somewhere out there, the humans were still watching, still protecting, still ready to sacrifice. She whispered to the wind, thank you. The wind did not answer, but the peace remained. The belief was shattered forever. The killers were gone. Only the saviors remained.